Okay, so part A, we're talking about the origins of life. Uh, the idea of, we're going to jump around this quite a bit. So we're going to go from 2 to 10. So we'll just start out with the idea that all living things come from other living things. So that means that there is no way that that you came from something non-living. Uh, Whether that would be, if the theoretical practice of cloning, that's still biogenesis. All it would still come, you would still come from a living thing. Spontaneous generation states that living things can come from non-living things. So up until the 17th century, this is what people thought. So now we have had several experiments that actually have proved biogenesis as how life came to be. So we had to come from something. You couldn't just spontaneously generate. You had to come from something. So we'll go to the first lifelike forms. So first hereditary material seems to have come from RNA. Remember, RNA is what creates proteins. Scientists believe that the first life forms may have started out as self-replicating RNA molecule inside of a cell, and gradually we see that that started carrying information from cell to cell instead of just being a life form that's just made of protein, nothing else. So your first prokaryotes, remember this is the single cell organisms, developed when there was no oxygen in the atmosphere, therefore they had anaerobic. If we go way back to our cellular respiration, we remember anaerobic does not create nearly as much energy, so this takes a long time for an organism to be able to turn into something else. So this is why photosynthesis was extremely important into the creation of life as we know it. So the first cells were heterotrophs that would take in other organic molecules. So of course, these first life forms, prokaryotes, would eat and devour other molecules, whether they were plant or bacterial life forms or just protein, like we saw with the RNA. But according to our fossil records, this is what we see. So archaebacteria, on Earth, are now thought to be similar to these first organisms. These organisms obtained energy through chemosynthesis. So chemosynthesis is taking in different chemicals and being able to synthesize that into ATP. Photosynthetic and aerobic bacteria gradually are going to come into being as sunlight becomes more prevalent through the Earth's atmosphere. So as it gains this photosynthesis, oxygen becomes a byproduct. So now we're going to have bacteria be able to use that oxygen to create energy so much faster and expand faster. So that's why you'll see aerobic bacteria start coming into being. But oxygen can destroy certain enzymes that are essential for cell function. It is thought that the first aerobic organism bonded oxygen to stop it damaging these enzymes. So aerobic respiration began and pushed us forward into this. So this is talking about 3.5 billion years ago. These are related to the cyanobacteria. Uh, it took billions of years for oxygen to reach the levels in the atmosphere for the present day. Some of the oxygen eventually reached the upper parts of the atmosphere where it was bombarded with UV, where O2 then reacted with single O, so now you have O3. O3 is your ozone, and it makes it possible for the terribly harmful light to be able to be processed better, and life for it to be able to exist on land instead of underwater. The first eukaryotes came from an invasion of small aerobic prokaryote lived and reproduced inside of a larger anaerobic prokaryote. So the idea is that these were able to combine and start working together to become an organism. This mutualistic relationship gave protection to the small prokaryote energy and the larger prokaryote. So we're still talking about billions of years ago. So it took almost 2 billion years for this for this step in evolution. And these smaller prokaryotes created the modern mitochondria. This eventually, in your photosynthetic bacteria, you eventually see the chloroplasts. So chloroplast mitochondria are going to be different. They have the same purpose, but they are different based on what they are doing. Evidence supports that they still, to this day, replicate independently of the DNA in the cell. DNA is circular like a prokaryote. So you'll see this is our first step towards evolution. We see the origin of life is coming from these smaller prokaryotes and turning it into a eukaryote. So think about your cells. When they come together to form your skin, they're working together to form something totally different, but yet they are independent of themselves, but they work together to form something else. Think of these prokaryotes turning into a eukaryote like that, like your skin cells or like your connective tissues that are coming together. All right, remember, 7 out of 10, you're good to go. What I'll do is I'm actually going to combine. Nope, we're going to go ahead and do this. Take the quiz, finish it, move on to evolution. That is part 9. Good luck.